I remember the first time I felt utterly exposed, as if the whole world could see the lack of confidence that plagued my every move. I was standing in a crowded cafe, clutching my coffee cup with both hands, trying to blend into the wallpaper. It wasn't that I wanted to be invisible, far from it. I longed to feel comfortable in my own skin, to exude the ease and charm I saw in others. But no matter how hard I tried, something inside me always crumbled under the pressure. Dating was an even greater nightmare. It was like stepping onto a stage where the spotlight was always too bright, and I was constantly fumbling my lines. I'd watch others navigate the dating world with what seemed like effortless grace, while I stumbled over words, second-guessed every decision, and hid behind my fear of rejection. The idea of putting myself out there was terrifying, and I often found myself trapped in a cycle of overthinking and self-doubt. I had been on a few dates over the years, but each time, the same pattern played out. I would get excited about the possibility of a connection, only to sabotage it before it could even begin. I was always hyper-aware of my insecurities, convinced that my date could see every flaw and imperfection. My mind was a relentless critic, telling me I wasn't good enough, interesting enough, or attractive enough. And so, I would retreat, mentally shutting down and withdrawing into myself. One night, after yet another disappointing date, I sat in my apartment and cried. I felt defeated, broken, and unworthy of love. I replayed the evening in my head, scrutinizing every awkward moment, every hesitation, and every silence. The weight of my own expectations was crushing me, and I didn't know how to escape it. I wanted to be someone who could approach dating with confidence, someone who believed in their own worth. But the person I saw in the mirror was miles away from that ideal. Things hit rock bottom when I met someone I truly liked, someone I thought could be different. We had been chatting online for a few weeks, and I felt a real connection. For once, I allowed myself to hope. I convinced myself that this time, things would be different. But when we met in person, my old fears resurfaced with a vengeance. I could barely look them in the eye, let alone carry on a meaningful conversation. My nerves took over, and I could feel the walls going up around me. By the end of the night, I knew I had blown it. I went home that night feeling like a complete failure. It wasn't just the disappointment of the date, it was the realization that I was stuck in this endless loop of self-sabotage. No matter how much I wanted to change, my lack of confidence was holding me back from living the life I truly wanted. For days, I wallowed in my misery, convinced that I was destined to be alone. But somewhere, in the middle of that despair, a small voice inside me whispered, "Enough." I had spent too long believing that I wasn't worthy, that I didn't deserve love, that confidence was something other people had but I never would. I was tired of being a prisoner of my own insecurities. I knew something had to change. It wasn't easy. The road to building self-confidence was long and full of setbacks. I had to start by acknowledging the deeply ingrained beliefs I had about myself. Growing up, I had always been the quiet one, the shy one. I was the person who stayed in the background, content to let others take the lead. And while that worked for me in many areas of my life, it didn't serve me when it came to dating. My fear of rejection, my reluctance to put myself out there, and my inability to believe in my own worth were all rooted in years of self-doubt. I started small. I practiced positive affirmations, even though they felt foreign at first. "You are enough," I would tell myself in the mirror, even when I didn't believe it. "You are worthy of love." The more I repeated these words, the more I started to internalize them, little by little. I also made a conscious effort to stop comparing myself to others. It was a bad habit I had developed over the years, always measuring myself against people who seemed more confident, more attractive, more successful. But comparison is a thief of joy, and I had to remind myself that my journey was my own. Therapy was another critical part of my transformation. I found a therapist who specialized in self-esteem and confidence building, and for the first time, I had a safe space to unpack my insecurities. We worked through my fears, my anxieties, and the deep-rooted belief that I wasn't good enough. I began to understand that my lack of confidence wasn't a reflection of my worth, it was a reflection of my experiences and the negative stories I had been telling myself for years. One of the hardest parts was learning to be vulnerable. I had spent so long building walls around myself that the idea of letting someone in, really letting someone see me, was terrifying. But I knew that if I wanted to build meaningful connections, I had to be willing to take that risk. Vulnerability, I learned, wasn't a weakness, it was a strength. It took courage to show up as my authentic self, flaws and all. Slowly but surely, I began to put myself out there again. But this time, I did it differently. Instead of approaching dating with fear and trepidation, I approached it with curiosity and openness. I allowed myself to be present, to enjoy the moment without worrying about where it would lead or whether I was good enough. I stopped trying to fit into some idealized version of what I thought I should be and started embracing who I truly was. There were still moments of doubt, of course. There were times when my old insecurities would resurface, whispering in my ear that I wasn't enough. But now, I had the tools to quiet those voices. I reminded myself of how far I had come, of the work I had done to build my confidence. I knew that I was a work in progress, but I also knew that I was worthy of love, just as I was. Eventually, I met someone who saw me for who I truly was, someone who appreciated my vulnerability and my authenticity. For the first time in my life, I felt confident in a relationship, not because I was trying to be perfect, but because I was being myself. It was liberating to realize that confidence wasn't about being flawless, it was about embracing my imperfections and showing up with courage and self-assurance. Looking back, I realized that the hardest part of my journey wasn't the dating itself, it was learning to love myself. It was learning to believe that I was enough, that I deserved love and connection just as much as anyone else. The confidence I gained wasn't just about dating, it was about how I showed up in every aspect of my life. I became more assertive at work, more comfortable in social situations, and more at peace with who I was. If there's one thing I've learned from my experience, it's that confidence isn't something that magically appears overnight. It's something you build, step by step, through self-reflection, vulnerability, and a willingness to embrace discomfort. It's about showing up, even when you're scared, and trusting that you are enough, exactly as you are. Today, I no longer dread dating. I approach it with an open heart and a sense of adventure, knowing that no matter what happens, I am worthy of love and connection. The journey wasn't easy, but it was worth every tear, every moment of doubt, and every step I took toward becoming the confident person I am today. For anyone reading this who feels the way I once did, lost, insecure, and unworthy, know that you are not alone. Confidence is something you can cultivate, even if it feels impossible right now. You are enough, just as you are, and you deserve to be seen, loved, and cherished. Trust the process, be kind to yourself, and remember that the greatest conquest isn't finding love, it's mastering the art of believing in your own worth. Over time, I began to see small shifts in my behavior and my outlook. Therapy had been a critical part of my journey, but it wasn't just about talking through my feelings, it was about actively learning new skills and tools that I could apply in my day-to-day life. I worked closely with my therapist to identify the patterns of thought that were holding me back. We pinpointed where my insecurities were rooted and how they manifested in my interactions, not only in dating but in every area of my life. I had spent so long believing that rejection was a reflection of my worth, but through therapy, I began to understand that rejection is a part of life and it doesn't define who I am. We explored concepts like self-compassion, something I had never really given much thought to. I had always been so hard on myself, setting impossible standards that I could never live up to. When I learned to extend the same kindness and understanding to myself that I would offer to a close friend, things started to change. My therapist also introduced me to the idea of cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, which focuses on changing negative thought patterns. It was a game changer for me. Instead of letting my mind spiral into anxiety every time I thought about dating, I learned to recognize the negative thoughts as they came up and challenge them. I'm not good enough became I am enough, and I'm learning every day. This date will be a disaster turned into I don't need to predict the future, I just need to be present and open. I also started practicing mindfulness. This was tough at first because my mind was constantly racing with doubts and insecurities, but mindfulness helped me slow down and focus on the moment. I learned to pay attention to my body, my emotions, and my thoughts without judgment. It was liberating to realize that I didn't have to be perfect, and I didn't have to control everything. I could simply be, and that was enough. Building confidence wasn't just about changing my mindset, it was about taking action, even when I didn't feel ready. I started pushing myself out of my comfort zone in small, manageable ways. I made a point to initiate conversations, to smile more, and to make eye contact with people. These small steps might seem insignificant, but for someone who had spent most of their life hiding in the background, they were monumental. Each time I took one of these steps, it reinforced the idea that I was capable, that I could handle discomfort, and that I could grow. One of the most important things I did was surround myself with supportive people. I used to think I had to handle everything on my own, that asking for help was a sign of weakness. But the truth is, we all need a support system, especially when we're going through something as challenging as rebuilding our confidence. I leaned on friends and family, people who loved me for who I was and who encouraged me to keep going even when things got tough. They reminded me of my worth when I couldn't see it myself. I also learned to embrace vulnerability. This was one of the hardest lessons for me because it meant letting people in, showing them the parts of myself that I had always tried to hide. But vulnerability was the key to building real, meaningful connections. I stopped pretending to be someone I wasn't and started showing up as my true self, messy, imperfect, and human. And when I did that, I found that people responded with kindness, empathy, and acceptance. As I continued to practice these new habits and ways of thinking, I began to notice real changes in how I approached dating. I no longer felt the same overwhelming anxiety before a date. Sure, I still got nervous, but it was a different kind of nervousness, the kind that comes with excitement and possibility rather than fear and dread. I started to enjoy the process of getting to know new people, and I stopped putting so much pressure on myself to make every date successful. Instead, I focused on being present, being open, and being myself. But while therapy and self-reflection were critical in my journey, there was one resource that truly accelerated my growth and helped me reach a place of genuine confidence: the book The Confidence Conquest: Mastering Dating with Self-Assurance. This book was a turning point for me. When I came across it, I was already making progress, but I still struggled with applying everything I had learned consistently. The Confidence Conquest broke down the process in such a clear, step-by-step way that it felt like the missing piece of the puzzle. The strategies in the book weren't just theoretical, they were practical, actionable steps that I could implement right away. It was like having a guide to walk me through the process of building confidence from the ground up, specifically in the context of dating. I followed the exercises diligently, and the results were almost immediate. I could feel my confidence growing with each chapter, and it wasn't just in dating, it spread into every aspect of my life. For anyone watching this video who is struggling the way I did, feeling trapped by self-doubt and fear, I can't recommend The Confidence Conquest enough. It's more than just a book, it's a game changer. If you're ready to transform your confidence and take control of your dating life, grab a copy of this book. It helped me become the person I always wanted to be, and I know it can do the same for you.